We have 1 minute. I know. That's all good. I can smile off the camera. I'm on the camera. I do have that problem. All of America, the whole group. Am I on? I don't think our mics are on, or not.
Keep them off. You're in charge.
Oh, I'm unmuted, but I don't have volume. Oh, bummer. Can I smile and wave? We'd like to recognize Commissioner McCarville's dad. No, I'm just joking. At this time, I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Meridian Planning and Zoning meeting for the date of December 19th, 2019. We're not to 2020 yet. And let's start with roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Holland?
Here.
Commissioner Seal?
Here.
Commissioner McCarville?
Here.
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
Here.
Absent are Commissioners Casanelli and Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, ma'am. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. We do have, for those in the audience that are here or could be here for Shelburne South subdivision, file number H2019-0106. That was not posted properly for this meeting, so that we're going to continue that meeting to January 16th. So we'll only be opening that application up for the continuation to the January 16th date. So if you want to stay for that, you can, but we're only going to do a continuance this evening. With that change, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have one item on the agenda, which is the approval of minutes for the December 5th, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Thank you. At this time, I will explain the public hearing process for this evening. We will open each item individually and then start with the staff report. The staff will report the findings regarding how the application adheres to our comprehensive plan and uniform development code with the staff's recommendations. After the staff has made their presentation, the applicant will have the opportunity to come forward to present their case for approval of their application and respond to any staff comments. The applicant will have 15 minutes to present their application. After the applicant has done so, we will open the floor to public testimony. There's an iPad in the back. If you would like to be testify on one of these applications this evening, please make sure you sign up. We'll obviously ask you to come forward if you haven't signed up, but please, so we can kind of keep track of who's on the list, please sign up in the back. If there's any individual here that's speaking for a larger group, I don't think we have any HOAs type applications tonight, but is anyone here representing an HOA? No? Okay, we'll kind of skip that component of this. After the applicant and the public have had a chance to testify, we'll ask the applicant to come back forward and close the discussion, and then we'll deliberate on the application and try to make a decision to move it forward to public, city council or to recommend approval here in the body. So with that, let's move on. If it's all good with the commission, we can take up 4A, the Shelburne South subdivision first, and we'll open that up and have it for continuance. So I move forward with opening a public hearing on Shelburne South, file number H2019-0106. Any comments before we move for a motion to continue this to January 16th? And everybody understands it was not posted correctly, so we need to make sure the public is aware why that application is being continued this date.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCarville.
I move that we continue H-2019-0106 to January 16th due to improper posting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue file number H2019-0106 Shelburne South. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Thank you very much. With that, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the public hearing for Off the Field, located at 2204 East Lanark, and it's H2019-0112, and we will turn it to Bill for the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. First item on the agenda this evening is off-the-field conditional use permit. The site consists of 2 acres of land currently zoned IL and is located at 2204 East Lanark Street, which is north of Franklin Road and east of Locust Grove Road. You can see on the comprehensive plan designation, or the map here in front of you, that the property is designated industrial on the future land use map, and that's why it's currently zoned IL, which coincides with that designation. The applicant is here this evening to discuss a conditional use permit to operate an indoor recreational facility. I would mention to the commission that started working with the applicant early spring of this year because he was in violation with the city code. He was operating there illegally. And so one of the requirements for him to come into compliance with city code and our building department is to first procure this CUP and then follow up with the building department to get a certificate of occupancy. So the site was developed in 2013 with a office flex building. As you can see here on the right-hand side, and then here's an aerial of the frontage of the building. So you can see here, as it's currently developed, it does meet UDC standards for parking and site development. So there are really no requirements this evening, except for in our staff report, we did require the extension of a sidewalk along the frontage of Lanark Street. We reached out to ACHD, and they have confirmed that a sidewalk could be required if the city wanted it. But if you look at the surrounding area, it's primarily industrial in nature. So city staff is of the opinion we don't know if and when other sidewalk would come in along the side of the roadways because of its industrial nature as it's currently developed. Typically, under the city code, we get sidewalks on a piecemeal basis with development. We didn't get it when it was subdivided in '77. We didn't get it when we developed in 2013. So really just staff posed a question in the staff report to leave it up to your purview if whether or not the change of use in the conditional use permit, you want to see a sidewalk developed on this site. That is one of the requirements in the code. You can prescribe safeguards that are outside of the scope of the boundary if you think there's a public safety concern for having pedestrians coming into this site. That's something you need to take under consideration this evening. As I mentioned to you, it is industrial in nature, and this is going from an industrial use to more of a commercial use. If you've looked at the hearing outline in front of you, you can see the applicant is proposing to do strength training there. So he intends on having anywhere from 30 to 60 clients throughout the day, and it is on appointment basis only. Typically, when we look at these uses, we see how their hours of operations are compatible with the surrounding industrial uses. And in this particular case, it looks like the applicant has stated in his application that they intend to operate between the hours of 6 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. Again, it's on case-by-case appointment only. He also intends to have 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee. So other than the code enforcement issue and the requirement for the sidewalk, or at least your purview for the requirement for the sidewalk, staff received written testimony from the applicant in agreement with the conditions of the staff report. Staff is recommending approval of this conditional use permit. I'll conclude my presentation and stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Hall.
Mr. Chair, Bill, one quick question. On the future use map, the parcel that's directly to the east of this, does it say that it's designated for civic?
And
I don't know if you have
Mr.
any
Chairman, members of the
thoughts
commission,
there.
yes, it does. It is civic, but the city also owns the lot that's directly to the east of this boundary because we have a well lot there next to this piece of property. So the city already has, quote, a civic use there. So I'm not sure what the other intent for that civic use was and why we have that on the map. And I'm not sure if it's part of the cleanup that we currently have with the comprehensive plan update. But I could look into that for you, but yeah, I'm not sure the particular reason for that.
My main question for that was related to the sidewalk use. If that was going to develop out as a civic public use area, then it might make more sense for the sidewalk. But if there's not another compatible use next to it,
You can certainly click on the ownership. Maybe the school district owns it. I'm not sure. I see I know there's a school in the area that could facilitate some sidewalk in the future. But let's go ahead and see what the ownership is, and I'll circle back with you if you want the applicant to come up.
Perfect. Thanks, Bill.
Any additional questions? Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward? thank you for being here. Please state your name and your address for the record before you start.
Taylor Bateman, 3659 East Wormwood Court, Boise, Idaho.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I'm in agreement with the staff report. I've been working with Bill a lot through this process, and actually, so I own the company there and the building now as well. So I'm doing everything I can to work with the city, and so I'm in agreement with the staff report. I'm just here if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
I think I actually worked with her son.
No questions? Taylor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill, would you stay real quick while Bill answers that question?
So I've had a chance to pull that property up on GIS. It is owned by the school district next to this property.
Who we work with a ton as well.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McConnell.
I was going to save this for the comments, but while Bill was making his presentation, I'd kind of written a note that maybe we put in there that the sidewalk is required if either side of him puts one in the future.
Well, I have a very similar thought to
Okay.
what you're thinking. If there needs to be one, I think you look at that area and it's rolled curb everywhere.
Yeah.
So it would kind of be out of sort that we're adding a curb or a sidewalk to nowhere. Any additional thoughts? Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone in the audience who would like to testify on this application?
Mr. Chair, no one signed up to testify tonight.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify? Going once, going twice? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Holland.
I move we close the public hearing for off the field H-2019-0112.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on off-field H 2019-0112. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Well, it is properly in front of you. What say you?
Mr. Chair, just for full
Mr. Seal.
disclosure, my son does go to off the field. I feel I can be
We appreciate that.
impartial to this, so.
Good call. Thoughts? Commissioner Carville, I have the exact same thought you do. I think if at one point down the road, if there was a school to be, there are industrial yards right now to the east, lay down areas and truck parking. If that was to become a school in the future, I think we could talk about developing at that time, but I don't think it's necessary now.
Mr. Chair, I would agree. I had the same thought that if we were to require it, we would put a condition that they would add the sidewalk if and when the property to the east is then developed. Because looking at the map and the street view, it doesn't look like it would be fitting to have a small section of sidewalk that doesn't connect to anything.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
Yeah, I had originally thought, it's kind of, the building is there and it's beautiful, but I know we're kind of in need of the industrial and the commercial, the uses, but if there's a school next to it anyway, it's probably a nice buffer going forward.
And we greatly appreciate you coming in and get into code compliance. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Well, if there are other further comments, motion is always in order, so whenever.
Mr. Chair.
Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
I move after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H-2019-0112 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of December 19th, 2019, with the modification that sidewalk would be required if the property to the east of them developed in the future.
Second.
East or west? Either one?
East or west.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry. Correction. East or west of them develops in the future with sidewalk.
A second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve file number H-2019-0112 off the field. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thank you. We appreciate it. Merry Christmas. Next on the agenda is file number H-2019-0119, a Magical Minds Daycare, and we'll start with the staff report. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Next item is a conditional use permit for a group daycare. The site consists of 0.28 acres of land zoned R8 and is located at 2571 East Tormina Drive. The property is primarily surrounded by single-family residential properties zoned R8, and they're located within the Messino Meadows subdivision. The applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit to, again, operate a group daycare for up to 12 children, as allowed under the UDC. It is a preschool, and they intend on having staggered class hours, so have some classes in the morning, some classes in the evening. Per the specific use standards, they are subject to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and that is a condition of approval in the staff report. As you can see here in the photo, we wanted to have a parking plan and a safe area for drop-off for parent pickup and drop-off of children, which is a requirement of code. So the applicants actually provided a parking exhibit in the lower right-hand corner here. You can see there's adequate on-street drop-off areas, and then there's actually 4 concrete pads in front of the home. And this parking does exceed UDC standards, so they do meet they do have the required parking in excess of code. Staff did receive written testimony from the applicant, Richard Gardner, in agreement with those conditions of approval, which basically comply with the specific use standards of daycare use. Staff is recommending approval with the stated conditions in the staff report. With that, I'll conclude my presentation and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions for staff? Seeing none? Oh, Commissioner Seal? No. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Yes,
Thank you for being here tonight.
thank you. Richard Gardner here for Magical Minds, and just don't have much to add.
Can you give us your address?
Resident of 2571 Termina
Thank
Drive.
you very much, sir.
And not much to add, just staff have been great to work with. We worked with Kevin and Sonia, and they got us to the right place.
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Seal?
Just a few questions. How many people will be staffed?
Right now, there's one teacher, and that's Karina Gardner that lives there. Our plan is not to exceed that right now. Well, I guess if a parent volunteers, that counts as an employee. So she does typically have a parent volunteer there sometimes. It would be the plan.
Okay.
In the future, if we were to want to do like hire an employee, then it would probably be replacing Karina rather than, we don't have room for more than one class at a time. So it's only going to be one class.
And with it looks like you want to do an AM class of 7 to 12 children and then a PM class of 7 to 12 children. Will there be any continuance of the morning class into the afternoon class, or just a completely new set of kids?
No, 2 separate classes. Yeah, 2 separate groups.
Additional questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. And I'd mention Karina Gardner, the actual teacher, is in attendance. There's also a neighbor that's here as well. I don't know if she signed up to talk. But.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Very
Thank
much
you.
appreciate it. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who wishes to testify?
Mr. Chair, 3 people signed up, 2 of which are the applicant, and 1, I believe, is the neighbor, but not to testify tonight.
And would you like to speak this evening? Anyone? We appreciate it. Please state your name and your address for the record, ma'am.
It's Cinda Johnson, and it's 2357 East Termina Drive. So I'm just down the road from them. I'm not next door, just a few houses down. And it's really hard to find preschools around there, honestly. And this preschool, I have kids that will be able to go in a couple years, and we could walk there, which is amazing to be able to find that. And I really don't think, like, the parking would be great. There wouldn't be any issues getting back and forth. So that's all I have to add.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. It's always nice to have neighbors speaking happy, positive thoughts. Any additional thoughts, comments? Anyone else would like to testify in this application in the audience? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Oh, would the applicant like to say any additional, do you have any additional comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Seal.
move to close the public hearing for Magical Minds Daycare H2019-0119.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on H 2019-0119. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thoughts?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Seal.
Only 2 concerns I have on the property itself is the back is there's essentially a canal that's back there. It's not right off the back of the property, but it is within eyeshot. And I think that's one concern I have. The others is just it's quite a ways away from a public park. So, I mean, if there's any outings, then it's quite a hike for kids in the preschool age range to get out there. So it's not undoable. And I know that there's some preschools that do, pretty big hikes and take kids places. So, but those are the only two concerns that I had on it. Everything else looks pretty good.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
Bill, do you have the landscape plan that was included in the packet materials? Because I think I remember seeing that when I was looking through stuff.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I don't have the landscape plan, but I can tell you there is a multi-use pathway that runs along the back of this property, 10-foot, part of the city's pathway network. And so as a requirement, and I did the subdivision, I remember doing the site inspection for the subdivision, there is a 6-foot tall wrought iron fence along the back. And per the specific use standards for daycares, you've got to have a non-scalable fence, so that essentially does meet code, just like the 6-foot vinyl fencing that's along their side property line too. So here are the concerns, but per the UDC standards, they have the required fencing per the code, they meet code. But if you want me to pull over the landscape plan, I'm certainly happy to pull that up, show you what that looks like, or pull it up on Google Maps and we can see what it looks like developed as well.
I mean, I looking at the property, it appears that it's a pretty big backyard, and that pathway's right there. So less concerned about that, but I understand bringing it to our attention. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
Yeah, I've got similar thoughts after, looking at kind of the aerial of the house. It looks like they've got a nice fenced backyard to still have some room for kids to play around if they need to have a break or get outside, and there's a pathway there. I'm not too concerned with where it's located. I think overall, 7 to 12 kids is not too excessive, and there's certainly a need for more preschool type facilities in the valley. There's definitely a shortage for that, so I'd be supportive.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
Yeah, I would be supportive of it as well. It seems like the square footage of the house and the lot, just even the shape of it, is conducive to allow a little elbow room.
And I'm in agreement. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. But I think the pathway and the fencing that is around it would provide enough protection, and we're not talking about a ton of kids. So,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Seal.
after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H-2019-0119 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of December 19th, 2019.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve file number H-2019-0119, Magical Minds Daycare. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you. We appreciate you guys being here. Merry Christmas. Okay, last item on the agenda is file number H-2019-0121, box storage, and let's start with staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Next items before you is the box storage annexation and conditional use permit application. The site consists of 1.92 acres of land between two parcels. One parcel is currently in Ada County, which is part of the annexation request and currently zoned RUT, and the other parcel is zoned CC, and both of them are located on the east side of North Eagle Road, just north of East River Valley Street at 2480 and 2500 North Eagle Road. North of this property, we have the Great Wall China Restaurant, Zone CG. We have retail along the south, Zone CG. Eagle Road is bound on the west boundary of the site. And then on the east is the Regency at River Valley apartment complex. So just some history on this particular property. The CC Zone property was annexed in at the same time as the apartment complex in 2008. As part of that annexation, there wasn't a development agreement for this particular site. The applicant is proposing, has secured or in process of buying this property to the south and annexing it in. And as part of the staff report, we are recommending that they enter into a new development agreement consistent to what we are discussing this evening for the storage facility. You can see on the future land use map that this property is mixed-use regional on our future land use map, and therefore that's the request for the CC zone, which is consistent with that designation. So the site has remained vacant for quite some time. We have worked with the applicant over the years trying to find an appropriate use for the site. Given the access challenges for this property is probably the prime reason why it's still sitting vacant at this point. The other thing to mention to the commission is sewer and water was also brought into that site across one of the CC properties to serve the multifamily development. As part of their site plan this evening, as one of their conditions, they're gonna have to relocate the existing water and sewer line as they have a building over an existing easement. So they're aware of that requirement to relinquish that, relocate the water and sewer mains to an appropriate location, and reestablish new easements with the city. So the applicant wants to annex in again a portion of the site, and then they're requesting a conditional use permit for a storage facility, which consists of approximately 600 climate-controlled storage units in a 3-story, 100,000 square foot building in the graphic that's at the north of, or at the top of this slide before you. We're looking at 25 traditional storage units and 2 separate single-story buildings containing a total of 8,400 square feet to the north and south of climate-controlled building. So essentially here along the north boundary and the south boundary are some standalone buildings for additional storage. As I mentioned to you earlier, access to this site is challenging. Under the UDC, when we have roads that front on state highways, we try to get a parallel road either through a backage road or through cross-access drives. The applicant, if you had a chance to read the staff report and looking at this area here, with the development of Great Wall China, the Great Wall China restaurant, and then the retail along the south, staff did require that they grant cross-access to these particular properties, and so we're asking the applicant to reciprocate now that he's coming in for development. I would mention to the commission that the access to Great Wall was approved through a variance in 2007 or 2008 in that time frame, and it is meant to be an interim access. So at some point in the future, when this road, it was always set up that if and when an access road or backage road was constructed into East River Valley Street, their access would close. That variance would no longer be valid. If you had a chance to read the staff report, which I know you have, the developer of this northern vacant piece is working, currently negotiating with ITD on another access to Eagle Road, which will hopefully facilitate the closure of the Great Wall access and then facilitate even greater access, greater backage road, linking all of this commercial frontage to a collector road, also back along to North Records Avenue in the future with some apartments that are planned here. So the full picture isn't before you this evening. Again, things are in the works, but right now the applicant is fulfilling his obligation and reciprocating, will have to reciprocate cross-access to the north and the south and create that backage road, not only consistent with the UDC, but also consistent with the mixed-use regional standards in the comprehensive plan. The other item that I wanted to bring up was secondary access to the facility. So under the specific use standards for storage facilities, we require 2 ways in and out of those. One can be a primary access and one can be a secondary access. As I mentioned to you, this building currently sits over an existing sewer and water easement, and they will have to be relocated and located in the drive aisle. But they currently go into the apartment complex in this location here. Because this is mixed use, and mixed use uses are intended to be integrated with vehicular and pedestrian connectivity, and given the amount of density that is planned for this area, one of the reasons why staff supports the self-storage facility use is because we have a great amount of apartments coming online in this area. We see that as a good amenity to what's occurring with the density, and those apartment dwellers will be using this storage facility. What we don't want them to do is have them go all the way back out onto a collector road and then come up into this development to get to their storage unit. So trying to be consistent with the mixed use standards, we're trying to get the applicant to lose some parking here and provide this as a pedestrian and access, vehicular access, to allow residents here to utilize this backage road to either go to the restaurants, get up closer to some of those future retail uses that we know are going to happen on that northern larger piece, and then Trader Joe's and everything there that's occurring. I know the applicant, that's probably his primary objection this evening, is that requirement for that connectivity. They don't want pedestrian connectivity or vehicular connectivity. They want to basically keep it as it is currently, keep it with parking and then fencing and landscaping. The code requires a 35-foot landscape buffer along Eagle Road as it's an entryway corridor. And typically when we have CG zoning up against R40 or residential zoning, we require a 25-foot wide landscape buffer between land uses. But you can see here with the development of the apartment complex, there was a 15-foot landscape buffer developed on that side. And the plan before you this evening is depicting a 10-foot buffer. So in staff's opinion, the combination of 10 on this site, 15 on the other, with the addition of the carports and the garages along that boundary, we feel that that's an adequate buffer. As they move forward through the public hearing process and get to city council, they will be need a waiver from city council to allow for that 10-foot reduction. But certainly that's something within your purview this evening. If you support the reduction of that buffer, that's certainly a recommendation we can forward on to city council for you this evening. You can see here that the style of the elevations have a mixture of stone and ephes in different colors. Again, pretty consistent with the design manual. They'll have to, if annexation is supported and approved and they execute their development agreement and get their annexation and conditional use approval approved by the city, then they will have to come back to city staff with a revised plan meeting their conditions and go through the certificate of zoning compliance and design review process. So as I mentioned to you, in a recommended condition for you this evening to take under consideration is the full access and connectivity into the apartment complex. As I mentioned to you, the applicant did respond to that in disagreement with that particular condition. Staff is recommending approval with a recommendation for a DA with the annexation, and per the conditions of the CU, or per the conditions in the staff report for the conditional use permit. With that, I will conclude my presentation and stand for any questions you may have.
Bill, does this need to go through design review through the process? It does.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, yeah, this is, first thing they need to do is get approval of the use and then come back through staff level approval for the design review application.
And this is all going into the DA, what they provided us, correct?
That is accurate.
Thank you. Additional questions for staff?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
Bill, did you say, is the applicant agreement with the cross-access to the north and south? Or that is just the connectivity to the apartments, the pedestrian, the vehicle?
Yeah, I think they're fine with the north-south access. I think they want it to happen, and they want Gossers or the developer of that vacant property to get another access point for them too. It's good for their business, as well as there's a bunch of apartments coming online on that property as well. It's just really tying into the existing apartments to the east, and I think they have some valid points. I mean, certainly you don't want to mingle. We don't want cut-through traffic, but at the same time, we don't want people going out from the apartments onto a collector road, turning back into this development. So it's a double-edged sword, but either way, the code requires that they have a secondary access into that facility. So we want to make sure that we don't inhibit what the Great Wall has, their access, and we want to make sure we get something farther to the north for this developer. But at this time, given that it's mixed use, the specific use standards call for it, and the comprehensive plan supports interconnectivity. I mean, staff's position is we need to make that happen at this stage.
And Bill, looking at the apartments to the east, the only access points are out to River Valley Street, and then is it to Records out to the?
Yeah, correct. If you look in this southeast corner, you can see there is an access into Records. I don't know
if it's a true baggage road going north-south to Trader
Yeah.
Joe's, I mean, you'd think that would be a
coming up.
no-brainer.
Yeah.
But I guess I'll wait to hear what the applicant has to say. Additional questions for staff? Would the applicant like to come forward? Sir, thank you for being here. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Thank you. Nick Mason with Bach Homes, 2237 Ramona, Salt Lake City, Utah. Appreciate staff. I know they're challenged, a little understaffed, but they've done a good job, and they've been good to work with over the last few years I've been working with them. I agree with the staff report, other than the access issues that we can talk about. I think there's a couple things. Vehicular and pedestrian access into the adjacent apartments. I think it needs to be understood that the ownership of these storage units in this land is different than the apartments. Bach Homes will have some ownership in both, but we are unable to force the owners of Regency to provide access. We have spoken with them, and they are not in support of it. I think the vehicular access it was pretty obvious why not. We do have a horrible access issue, which is why we are here today, trying to put storage units on the piece. I don't know if you can, is there a mouse maybe? Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so this is where the access will be. If a car is traveling this way, they have to turn down this road, and there's a median here. So they would have to come here and flip around, which is prohibited. There's a no U-turn sign. So in order for them to access, they have to go to the mid-block access on the other side of Center Cal, go back onto Records Ave, come in, take a left on River Valley, and then into there. We've had this piece of property on the market for 10 years, since we've had it approximately. We've had it under contract, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 times. And it's all failed because of the access. Retail uses are really going to struggle there. I know that Mr. Ma at the Great Wall is concerned of when his access gets closed that he will have a problem. Now, the full plan of this road going back through and then all the way through Gosser up into the retail up here is a great deal. We're happy with that. I think the access issues come as a temporary problem, but making this a secondary access to is problematic for several reasons. Number one, I can't do it. I cannot force the owner of the apartments to do it. We could provide a sidewalk going up to their fence and hope, and then we could talk to that ownership and see if they would do it. I've already had discussions, and it's been a no. The problem is with that, what I was getting at is with the access the way it is, the convenient way is to come down River Valley. It would be to cut through our apartments, come up here and use that access to get into the Great Wall once this temporary access is closed. And so we would be taking on public wear and tear on the private roads in there. And it's just, I mean, these are reasons why it shouldn't happen, but I mean, it really is something that can't happen because I don't have the ability to make it happen. The pedestrian access is an issue because of concern of theft. I mean, there has been some. It's not we don't have a huge problem, but we are concerned that this would be an easy way to walk in and steal something and walk out. It's just it's conducive to that. I do see, with talking to staff, their idea was that to connect these is a good idea because these apartments can walk over to the storage units. But I think the fact is, though, when you're visiting a storage unit, you're taking items there or back, and just, for example, someone carrying a bed or something over there doesn't make sense. They're usually going to drive it over. Another thing is that these storage units, it says 600 approximately. It could be up to 800 once we design it, depending on the size of the units. It's going to be servicing people all around this area. And so to concentrate on the access that the apartments has, I don't think is really getting to the point of what these storage units will serve. It's a much bigger deal. And so I think with that, another point is that in the comprehensive plan, it goes through the different mixed-use types. All of the mixed-use types do mention the pedestrian connectivity. When you get to the mixed-use regional, it says that it generally complies with the other mixed use, but it doesn't have a emphasis on that connectivity. I don't know what the intent was there, but it really does not look like it is a required thing. It also, within the comprehensive plan, it has the language of, this plan is not a set of standards or a means to enforce city code. Instead, it indicates in a general way how the community should develop. And I believe that with what abilities we have to provide vehicular and pedestrian connectivity, we are doing that by connecting to the property to the north and south. I think that's pretty much all I have. I would like to say that I understand that it needs to have a secondary access by code. I don't know exactly how we will do that, but I think that I would hope that we could have an approval subject to providing a secondary means of emergency access. It will be required of us, but to pinpoint where that is right now, I just don't think we can do that. But when we come in with site plan, it will be indicated on that, and of course approved by fire and police, who would be the emergency bodies that would like it and would approve it.
Questions for the applicant? Mr. Mason, so I mean, with that baggage road, once it connects all the way up to Trader Joe's, and I know that there's mixed ownership, and I get that, but don't you think that would be a better place to put that, to allow people to access north and south? I'm just being, I mean, it seems like it would make sense to give them additional access instead of having to go out to River Valley. They can cut over and go up, so they can go shopping.
You talking about on foot?
I'm talking about driving. So,
well, I mean, they'd be driving a couple 100 feet down to here. I mean, and driving back, I don't see it as a big deal. I think them being as close as they are to all this stuff is convenient enough. But again, whether that would be best or not, I can't make that decision, and we can't force that on an existing project.
and I get the comprehensive plan is a framework, but we like to have interconnectivity, so I get where staff's going with that.
I hope that you see that some of that is happening, maybe not to the fullest extent, but the full extent that I am able to agree to. Also, the east part of this property, it's closer to go down Records Ave than it is to go down the other way. So for half the property and our phase 2 that's not shown on here, the logical way to access all that stuff is via Records Ave.
Additional questions or comments for the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
Bill, what kind of, how do we have the ability to, is it in another agreement to have, that other property has to allow cross-access? Or is he correct that?
Are you referring to the apartment complex?
Yeah.
No, there is an agreement for that property to grant access to this piece.
So if he gives cross-access and they're saying no, it's still cross-access to nowhere?
Yes, that's the possibility. If we wanted an access there back in the day, we would have gotten it with the CUP when it went in.
Right, okay.
But I can certainly look through the record and look at the conditional use permit and verify that 100%, but we would have required that to be stubbed and constructed at that time, and what we have there is landscaping and parking. So that's why it's a slippery slope at this point, because we're trying, again, it goes back to the earlier discussion we had with a conditional use permit. We can't require annexation for him to do that, but a conditional use permit, you can require some of those safeguards if you feel it's necessary or deem it appropriate. And that's one of the conditions of approval, is that they provide vehicular connectivity and pedestrian access. The option you have is what we don't have. We said thou shall. You can certainly give him an out saying continue to work with that property owner and make it happen. And if they can't reach an agreement, then it doesn't happen. You can make it a requirement that it's an emergency access only, and they put a gate across there and still build it, but it just doesn't, it's only used in an emergency purpose. And at least pedestrians can still get in and out of there. Or you can leave it as is. As you mentioned, the comprehensive plan is a guide. It's not code.
Yeah.
But in our minds is, we know what's going to come online here. I don't necessarily disagree with the applicant. I don't know what type of U-Hauls are going to be coming to and through this site. I almost feel like the Great Wall is going to catch a lot of the brunt of it if it does happen, because you're going to have U-Hauls driving through a restaurant parking lot, which isn't always the best thing either, but we have what we have here at this point, and so we're trying to make the best of a difficult situation. As I mentioned to you, this has sat vacant for quite some time, and I've met with many different potential buyers of this property, and I've talked with Nick over the years, and we've all scratched our head on how to make access work. In the perfect world, we should have pushed the apartments and had a road go through there and separated the two uses. We would have had the problem solved. We had a road, public street built, and everyone would have had access. But today, all we can do is try to meet the intent of the code, follow the code. The code says reciprocate cross-access. So north and south is definitely the most important, but we certainly want to honor and follow the comprehensive plan as a guide. And at this point, there's a recommendation from staff that says we want it to be in access for vehicle and pedestrian connections. So that's why we put it in your good.
But they can't proceed
Whether or not you
forward
would-
without secondary access. That's
Not proceed. Well, they're conditioned to provide it regardless. They have to find a way to do it. And it's
we really like it here. If we can.
It's interesting. The specific use standards require 2 access points, but the fire code allows 1 access up to a certain square footage. So a developer for a storage facility, I've done these last couple of years, as we have quite a few of them in our communities these days. But you can go up to 62,500 square feet under the fire code with a single access. So more than likely, if they can't work out secondary access, that's probably where they're going to get capped. It's halted at that point until they get it figured out. So we need to get it figured out. Or, again, you have some latitude too, so food for thought. Any other discussions? I'm happy to look into those conditions of approval real quick and then get back with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that it's not code, but I know I drive around in other cities, not necessarily even here in Idaho, but you get stuck in somewhere, and it's like, if this was Meridian, I would be able to get out somewhere. I've come to see that benefit greatly.
Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
Bill, kind of along the lines of the previous questions, is there anywhere in the apartment complex that's kind of, specifically I'm kind of looking at that north, the north piece of that place. Is there something there that says, this road will be extended in the future, or something along those lines?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, no, not at this point. What we did is the developer of Bach, Regency of River Valley, this is all developed now with their second phase. And we got cross connection through this, and then they stubbed a driveway here. So these apartments will funnel in through this development, and then they run out to this location. So we got cross access here, but we did not get any other cross access in this location. So really, there's only that cross access in this area.
Is there, when the property to the north develops, would cross-access be, essentially cross-access be provided into what's already developed to the north to kind of tie it all in? I'm just trying to figure out how, people would have the ability, and again, we got a lot of apartments and dwellings like that going in. It would be nice if they didn't have to go out to Eagle or out to, one of the other streets, they would be able to get to this internally. I mean, if I lived
Well,
there,
there's-
I would want to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, there's a couple things to look at. One is the backage road requirement along state highways. That's a code requirement. That's 11.3H4. We want backage roads or cross-access driveways, and that's what the applicant's doing. Essentially, Rutgers Avenue does that as well. That was a requirement for that to be built, to be paralleling the state highway to get traffic dispersed throughout there. Now, what I can tell you, no, when this property to the north comes in, we're not going to require additional cross-access to this development, except for where we've already required it, which is, if you can see my cursor, it's in this general location. In discussion with the developer of this vacant property, they are looking to put an access in this location, and then there'll be a drive aisle that ties into Great Wall somewhere in here. And then there'll be some additional retail buildings with the apartments. So basically, the apartments are going to funnel out this way, come through block development potentially, and then have access to this commercial access point to Eagle Road, or also even cut through here. So we're going to get all of that connectivity. Again, we have to be mindful that we don't force a lot of commercial traffic through a residential development. That's not the intent between mixed use. Really, the best thing we should have done was require a roadway. But at this point, we're going to get cross-access with the commercial portion of the development, and then we're going to get cross-access with the residential portion, and try not to get them too much intertwined. But hopefully, through site design, they can figure a way to make the route circuitous, so you don't have to wind through commercial parking lots to have a backage road. Hopefully, people will be smart enough to say it's easier to go out on the collector road than go down through a commercial development to get through there. I don't see anyone driving this way to go out to River to get on Eagle Road. They're going to come out here and go that way, go to the collector. But at this point, we don't have all of those details yet, and we have a plan. There's an approval here on this portion, but they're not ready to develop anything yet. And I know they want to come back and further refine that plan. And so we've pre-apped with them. We know what their intentions are. They're just not ready to submit yet. They're just trying to fine-tune their plans with ITD on how that access looks. They have to get with the irrigation district and tile a portion of this waterway and figure out a culvert or a bridge essentially to go over that canal. So there's a lot of engineering that's going to have to happen and be involved in, and so there's a lot of moving parts here. So for now, the secondary access for this development will come through Great Wall along here and this area here for now.
But we do have that north-south connection through Great Wall.
Yeah, that's what in my presentation, that's what I alluded.
Yep.
There's cross-access granted here, and there's been cross-access granted here. So they do have those easements in place.
So Nick, to the northwest corner, what's in that northwest corner? I mean, is that something you guys could access there?
That's parking. I don't think it's any different, though, of the
Okay.
concerns of the ownership. But it's gonna, I mean, as he said, on the north side of all this, it's gonna connect, there's gonna be connectivity through here, so you're gonna have it everywhere. I mean, I don't think the comprehensive plan says you need it in 100% of the locations. I think it's gonna be adequate.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Holland.
one more follow-up question for Bill. So if they provide the cross-access north and south from River Valley up towards the Chinese restaurant, they would lose the access at the Chinese restaurant off of Eagle once that road's constructed, or they wouldn't lose that access off of Eagle Road to the Chinese restaurant until the northern property develops?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that's my recommendation. Certainly, the way the variance is structured, it says when there's a backage road, it needs to close. We don't want that to occur at this point. We don't want that access to close until we know what the Gossers are doing, or at least the developer to the north is doing, because I think that's a win for every property along the frontage of Eagle Road, is to allow that to remain until such time as we get something from the north feeding into this, because it's just, that use will not be viable.
Yeah, I think the Great Wall would probably fail if that people had to drive all the way around the block.
Well, they wouldn't have secondary access in that situation, or, I mean, they have primary access, I guess, but they don't have any secondary access. So you're actually providing them a secondary access with this north-south.
But their access, like what Bill's saying, when I build that road behind there, their primary access gets shut. And so,
Which wouldn't be a good thing, but yeah, no, I understand what you're
yeah,
saying.
it would be bad for him. I mean, we definitely would be in favor of keeping that temporary until the access gets connected to the north. I think makes sense, but I know that's not what has been put in writing beforehand.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
I think with that median coming in there on River Valley, it makes it real difficult for anything to get up into there.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Seal.
So just so I have a clear understanding of this, the access road that's coming up from the south, essentially that's going to come up along the eastern edge of the property, and then it will essentially, okay. Well, and that was my question. Is it going to connect into the parking lot, or is that going to be something that will, okay.
There's easements in place to do that. Yeah.
Right, and I mean, what I've heard is essentially when that's provided, then the access coming off of Eagle Road into the Great Wall is going to be cut off.
Yeah.
It could be. But
We'd like to keep it, then that
Yeah.
would be our secondary access that we need until the road from the north comes through. If that doesn't happen, then we're gonna have to figure something else out, or wait. You just wait till the Gossers develop and then we'll build.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I mean,
I mean, the access off of Eagle is pretty key for the success of the restaurant
Yeah.
as well as you guys, so.
yeah, and that was more or less what I was thinking is, I mean, essentially you're not going to want a lot of traffic coming through that parking lot. Anyway, I mean, on one hand, you get parking through the parking lot and people get hungry, and so they might say, hey, while we're here, we might as well eat.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have a lot of traffic through a parking lot you don't necessarily want. And if that access gets shut off, I agree. I think the Great Wall would not do well.
Yeah.
Be something that you have, this great visibility off of Eagle Road, and nobody would know how to get to
Yeah,
it.
so that's what we felt trying to sell the piece. It's like, oh, that's a great piece, but that was the problem.
Yeah.
And who has control of, who has control of when that access gets cut off? Is that ACHD?
Oh, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it's the city. We granted the variance. So technically, once that happens, we could go in there and say, ITD, we want that access closed, that property owner, and tell him. And then he wouldn't have his secondary access, which would have to come through the apartments or work with Gossers and make that happen. I mean, it's a chicken and an egg thing. We gotta, and certainly as Nick and the applicant goes through the hearing, I would certainly encourage this body to make a recommendation to council on how you want that access to be handled. Because as I mentioned to you, I'd prefer to see that remain open in an interim term until such time as Gossers or that property to the north figures out additional access points. But that variance was very specific, so it's,
Yeah.
but the council has the ability we've changed code a little bit since then. We don't require variance anymore for access to state highways. And so really it takes a council waiver for that to remain open. So, I mean, unless legal has a different opinion on it, I think certainly, would be nice to get something. I can look in record and see what ITD said about the access to see if they've made any mention on that being closed at this time or not. But certainly staff would support it remaining open until something to the north happens.
Andrea, do you have any comments to that?
I do.
Sure.
Bill's correct.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Holland, go right ahead now.
Sure. So shifting gears for just a second, my question's actually about the height of the building. So this is kind of one of those funny things. I appreciate the height, and also at the same time, I'm challenged by the height because storage units, I hate when it's just taking vast amounts of space and they spread out wide. And I appreciate that this is stacked, so that way you're maximizing the storage space but minimizing the footprint. At the same time, you've got 4-story apartments that are behind you. So my question is, what is the architectural look of what the building's going to look like for those 4-story apartments that are going to be facing it? Because they're going to lose the viewpoint that they have. They're going to be facing the building, but would just be curious if you've got some comments on that.
We haven't, typically renters don't have too big of a problem with stuff like that. If it was a single-family residence that someone lived at, then perhaps, but no, we haven't heard anything there. But the height of the building is definitely within code, right? I believe. I haven't heard anything.
Follow-up?
Good for now. Thanks.
Additional questions? Thank you, sir, very much. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, no ITD comments on this application in the
Awesome.
record.
Thanks, Nick. We appreciate it very much. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who would like to testify in this application?
Mr. Chair, we have one person signed in, but not to testify.
Ma'am, don't wish to testify? Okay. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Nick, do you have anything else you want to close on?
I'm glad to see someone's here for Brian. I've met with him several times, and as far as I understand it, he actually bought that property and was not told about the temporary access. And so when I went and talked to him about it, it was a surprise to him. So I'd really hate to see that close, and that's not just a ploy for me to get my access, but for him, it really would be unfortunate for him. But I do want to reiterate that I don't even have the ability to make that a temporary access there. So although I can try more, temporary maybe, but I would hope that we could just make it subject to obtaining a secondary access and to not make it specific to that area, because I just don't have the ability to do that, and I don't think we can put conditions on them. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing unless we have additional comments for staff? Mr. Seal.
Your mic's off.
I move that we close the public testimony for box storage, file number H2019-0121.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close public hearing on H 2019-0121. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, team, what do we think? Thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Seal.
As far as the secondary access, which seems to be kind of the sticking point to this at this point, I think since access is going to be provided through, personally, I think that I would rather recommend that to City Council that we keep that access through the Great Wall in order to provide for better business access as well as secondary access, because it's a given, it's a known, it's something that everybody can win on, where if we try to make the recommendation that they work with the property owners to the east, I mean, they've already indicated to the applicant that they're not in favor of that, and you know, we want to make sure good neighbors still coexist. Personally, I think access through there would be a good thing, considering the amount of apartments that are over there. But if it's something that's not going to be able to develop, the second best thing is what we know we can accomplish, which is going to be that access through the road on the east side up into the property to the north, without having to involve anything else other than a recommendation to keep the access off of Eagle Road open.
I think mine is yes and, because I'd like to see the north-south baggage road get done before any access is cut off from Eagle. I would like to see if the applicant would be willing to work with the neighbor to the east, because I do think that connection is wise. Both because I think that one of the biggest uses of this is going to be people in the apartment building, especially the type of storage that it is. But I understand that the offsite's very challenging, especially when you get an absolute no. So, yeah. How are we feeling about storage in that spot?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
I'll go back and just agree with your other comments too about access. I think it's critical to keep the access open at the Chinese restaurant, because it's gonna, I never want to see a business close because we've done something to their access.
Agreed.
Secondly, I think we could, encourage him to work with the apartments on finding an access point at some point, but I don't think we should require it because I think that that's for the same reasons he explained to us. It's hard to make somebody create an access when they've got parking spots and landscaping and fences already up and around there. As far as storage goes, we've seen an awful lot of storage coming through, and usually they're asking for conditional use permits. I like that they have maximized the height in this one, but at the same time, it's also a challenge for me because of where it's located. It kind of hides the apartment complex behind it, and it's a nice-looking apartment complex. I've driven by it many times. So I worry a little bit about the appeal of the apartment complex behind it because it's not going to be as visible anymore with the 3-story storage unit. I wish we could pick it up and move it to the back side of the apartment complex instead of the frontage of Eagle Road. But I know that's not the application in front of us. It's on this random little piece that's been hard for them to sell and develop, so I understand their concerns and their challenges with it. If it goes forward, I would want to make sure staff did a very thorough design review, because I know we don't have the ability to put input on a lot of those conversations, but making sure that the architectural appeal is there because it's a road, it's a big frontage component to Eagle Road. And I would want to make sure there was some sort of architectural appeal on the back side of it, facing the apartments, because even if they're renters and I was renting a unit there, I would be concerned about what the look of that would be out my window if I'm sitting on a patio and I'm staring at a big concrete wall. So that's my comments. I would want to make sure that we had some pretty good design standards and layout there.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
Yeah, for all the reasons that we've talked about with the access and everything and how long that piece has been there and the difficulties, I'm okay with this type of storage. I think the indoor controlled is kind of a different animal than
Agreed.
your regular pull your car up and unload your stuff in the garage door. But I would definitely agree with Commissioner Holland, maybe some strict design review to blend in with what else is around there. I know we get some of the storage units that want to go with their company colors and stuff, and I think something that blends in to what's already there is more appropriate. And nothing against your company colors, but other than stark blue and white, we've seen some of those go up and they're kind of in your face. And so definitely with it being on one of our primary beautiful frontage roads, or not frontage road, but main artery, and with what else is on that corner, I'd like to see it blend in what's there. And I am always all for the cross connectivity because, like I said, I've gotten stuck in places before and it's like, this is why we have it. I don't know if we can make it so in the future, if the other property ever did, that they would be required to open it up, but it makes no sense to open it up if there's nothing to open it up to.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely strongly in favor of recommending that we keep the access off Eagle open until the property to the north has that access opened up.
That was easy because I agree with everything you guys have just said collectively. I agree. This has been a really tough spot. I'm sure it's been difficult for you guys with access, just trying to figure it out. And every time they put up a new median, I'm sure it makes it that much more fun. So I know we've got a lot of storage that we've been doing, maybe not in this area. So, and this is a little more unique. This is Commissioner McCarville had said this. I think this is a different animal completely. So I'm good with all the recommendations I think that everybody's laid out. I would like to see them work with the neighbors. I know that that's not easy for you guys, but something, not a requirement, but an ask. And I would like to not, that access can't go away. I think it doesn't make any sense until we definitely have clean access north-south as a full baggage road up to Trader Joe's all the way back down to River Valley. So, are you writing out a motion, Commissioner Seal?
I can take a stab at this.
Awesome.
So, Mr. Chairman, remember,
Yes.
before I let you go proceed with your motion. I had a chance to pull up the recorded subdivision for that property, and there was no requirement for a cross-access easement on that, along that boundary. Only the sewer and water easement exists there.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks,
one more-
Bill.
One more question for Bill. Since this one's an annexation and zoning as well as a conditional use permit, do we have to have two separate motions or just recommend approval of the annexation?
It's the full
zoning?
package deal, approval and recommendation.
Right, okay.
And then, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'd heard you talk about the aesthetics and design. You can certainly add those as recommendations, conditions of approval that you want four-sided architecture and that it blend in or complement the apartment complex. That's within your purview.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Seal.
one of the thoughts I had on working with property owners to the east provide that access is possibly a gated access. Is that something that's in our purview to me, that might solve multiple problems, where if that's provided, but it's a gated access, the gated access is provided only to the people that are in that apartment complex. That keeps the cut-through traffic down. I don't know, kind of.
Mr. Chair, I think if you were to propose that, you still have the issue of the Regency Apartments making the determination if they want to rip up their landscaping to allow a gated. It also takes away some of their parking stalls, which could be a
Yeah.
challenge. So I think you could make a recommendation that the applicant reach out to the Regency Apartments to discover if there's any possibilities for secondary access, but I think it'd be tough for us to require it. It's my thought.
Agreed. Commissioner, are you ready?
We'll see. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the City Council of file number H2019-0121 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of December 19th, 2019, with the following modifications. One, that we recommend approval of the 10-foot buffer on the east side of the property. That there is a strict design review to ensure a good look and feel on all sides of the property to be consistent with the apartment complex that is on the east. That they work with the property owners to the east to provide or to possibly provide access, secondary access. And that we recommend that they keep access off of Eagle Road to the property to the north until an access road to the north is provided.
Second. Did we get it all?
I have a motion and a second. Bill, did that make, so we're not requiring that secondary access, but we're asking them to work with them? Is that
Take one more
clear there?
shot at it.
Yeah.
And it was
All right.
secondary access only, from what I heard you. Is that what you meant by emergency access, gated access, or
Just access.
what's your
Just
intent
access.
there?
Just access.
Okay.
We good with that motion in a second? Yes. All those, I have a motion and a second to approve and recommend approval of H 2019-0121 box storage. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Thanks, Dick. Appreciate it. Have a good Merry Christmas.
You guys too. That's the first time I've heard someone not wanting the tall apartments to not be blocked. I like that. That was good.
Gotta be different.
Have a great evening.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCarville.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yay. Yay.